I'm Matt Hanna,
And this is Horror Hour with the Hannas.
where we talk about your favorite scary new releases.
You speed running today.
What?
You're like speeding.
Oh,
Hannah.
I couldn't think of what to say. I almost said hi, I'm Hannah at the beginning, to be honest.
If you had said
I like
that,
took a
it
big
would've
breath
been
and I was
so
like,
funny.
oh wait, that's not mine. That's not when I speak.
That's not my name. Okay. Well, yeah, we're talking about Heretic today. We just saw Heretic 3 days ago. It came out this year, like a week and a half ago.
Yep, we just saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I've been kind of excited for this one for a while. When I see Hugh Grant in a movie anymore, I get pretty excited. He was in my favorite rom-com, like, back in Lay Day, and I just think he's, like,
What
the
rom-com
king.
was that?
Music and Lyrics with Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
It's, like, not super popular. I don't know anyone else who's
I only
seen
know
it.
him from the D&D movie, which is bad.
Which is crazy. Like, actually the craziest thing
When
I've
you were like
ever
Hugh
heard.
Grant, I was like, I don't know who Hugh Grant is.
Yeah, when I was trying to tell Matt who was in the D&D movie, I was like, oh yeah, and Hugh Grant. And he was like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Which is literally one of the most stunning questions you've ever asked me. Like, he's in Love
Notting Hill.
Actually.
Never seen it.
4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Never seen it.
Notting Hill, Bridget Jones' Diary. Like, he
I
is
haven't
in
seen any
all
of
of
those.
the things. Yeah, I haven't necessarily seen them all either, but I know who he is.
I haven't seen Wonka either.
Well, who cares about that? And that just came out. And you saw him in the trailers for that.
True.
And we were like, ew, why?
That was pretty weird. But yeah, we went and saw it in theaters. We went to the theaters twice this week.
Yeah, we did.
And we saw Anora as well, which was good. So highly
Yeah.
recommend. Not a horror movie, but I wanted to shout it out because
It's very, very, very
it's good. It won the Palme d'Or, whatever that means.
Yeah. The big boy.
The big boy at Cannes.
Yeah.
I almost said Canes, Raising Canes Film Festival.
Yeah, it's Raising Canes. We should just start calling it that.
yeah.
People don't know what it means.
And it was really good. And so we had a fun theater week. I
Yeah.
love being in the movie theater, just in general.
Yeah.
Take me back.
It was a good week for watching movies. Well, this movie starring Hugh Grant, like we said, as well as Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East. It's written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, whose name you might recognize as the original writers of A Quiet Place. So, back of the box summary. 2 young missionaries are forced to prove their faith when they knock on the wrong door and are greeted by a diabolical Mr. Reed, becoming ensnared in his deadly game of cat and mouse. That was a bad time to take a sip, knowing you had to respond to me.
Oh, my bad. I took a sip of my water. I'm
We're
sorry.
doing really good at podcasting today.
It happens.
I think that plot summary is like
Yeah,
almost spoiling.
it's close.
Yeah. I mean, this movie, like anything really spoils like half the movie.
Yeah.
if we're being
Well, we
honest.
are going to, I will say, since this is a new release, we are going to keep it spoiler free for 10 or so minutes, as we usually do. We'll do our spoiler zone thing before we start.
Yep.
But
I have a
yeah,
couple more background facts
Hit us
before
with
we
them.
get going into opinions and stuff. So Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who are the 2 young Mormon missionaries in the movie, were actually Mormon. They were raised Mormon. So they were able to give insight like into the religion when they were shooting the movie, which was really helpful, I guess, for the whole process.
should have had them in the writer's room.
Well, they actually had Hugh Grant in the writer's room a lot.
Okay.
I guess once he became attached, they had like a 200+ page long email threads back and forth with him because he would ask questions and be like, what the fuck is a Jar Jar? And like things like that. He'd be like, I've literally never heard of this in my life.
He had no idea who Jar Jar Binks was, and the impression he did was nothing what Jar Jar Binks sounds
I think
like.
it's on purpose because if you're going back and forth for a 200-page email thread to make sure that you understand the character and the script, I think he'd think you would look up what Jar Jar Binks sounds like.
Yep. That's what, but it was very funny when Hugh Grant. This movie had a couple weird things like that. They also said Burger King was the best fast food restaurant.
That was crazy. They slandered Taco Bell.
Yeah, they slandered Taco Bell. There was like
giving
moments where
food
I was
poisoning.
like, what? Like one, the Jar Jar Binks impersonation being not correct when it's like the easiest
It was
impersonation
so
to do.
funny.
And then 2, Burger King's #1 fast food. I was like, no, I said no one ever. There's not a person in human history that has said Burger King.
The fact that
is
they
the
put
best fast
Burger
food
King
restaurant.
so far above Wendy's when everyone puts Wendy's so far above Burger King was right away. I was like, that's crazy.
However, Burger King breakfast, them French toast sticks.
Fuck me up. That's why Burger King's #1.
Those little,
to
I
them.
don't even know if they had breakfast back. Oh wait, no, this movie's modern day.
Yes.
It feels
Yes, sir.
like it's a period piece, and it's not. I think when you just have Mormons in something, sometimes it feels like a period piece because of how they like.
Well, I think
dress
because
them.
it's such a different faith than like we're used to being around, because they are more strict about their practices.
Hey, we're from Pennsylvania, man. We see the Mennonites, we see the Amish. Like they're
Yeah.
kind of. I mean, they dress kind of similarly, not to Amish, but to Mennonites. So
I don't know anything about Mennonites.
I
mean, like,
you know what? I won't pretend to either. I've always been
Yeah,
told they're
so-
Amish light, but they're Amish with
Sure.
electricity.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who's to say? Well, Hugh Grant, while we're talking about cast and all of the weirdness that Hugh Grant was doing with his Jar Jar impression, this is only his second ever horror movie. The first being Lair of the White Worm, which was in 1988. So he took quite a hiatus
He
from
wanted
the
to come back.
genre. I think he's said recently he just like kind of wants to be in like weirder roles and stuff. So I feel like this probably appealed to him a lot. He had said in an interview, "I'm getting bored of playing obvious roles and being typecast," which Scott Beck and Brian Woods heard. And then they were like, okay, perfect. He's our number one pick. He'll be great. And then they got him. So good for them. They really did it.
I think it's cool to see him play this kind of creepy character as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hugh Grant is peak charisma, so having him in this bad guy role that's kind of charismatic, but then flips a switch into not being, was really interesting. And that's why I was so excited to see it, honestly.
I think that was definitely the
like,
big draw was Hugh Grant.
Yeah.
I think-
Also, I was looking up stuff, and it was a very big draw of past and current Mormons as well.
Interesting. Well, I don't want to speak on that until we get into spoilers.
Yeah. So we can, just voice some general opinions since we've gotten through background. I have some more later, but it's spoiler heavy, so we won't do that now. I liked the movie. There are things I didn't like about it, but I will say that the first half of the movie was really well done. I really, really liked, again, the first half. I thought that the dialogue was like really sharp and deliberate in the first half. And I thought that was cool. And I think for a movie that's very clearly about questioning faith, and that's not a spoiler because it's in the plot description and it's in the trailer, I thought that the conversations had about faith, especially in the first half of the movie, were really poignant. And those are the kind of conversations I feel like that we have had when thinking about faith and talking about religion with other people in our lives who are much more, have much more religious or like religion or faith than we do. So I liked
related
that.
to
Yeah.
the conversation.
Yeah, I did.
For me, I thought this movie was pretty average. I think there's a lot it does well. I actually think like performances I liked. I liked the way this movie looked a lot of the time.
I liked the way it was
which
shot, yeah.
is saying a lot because we know that I complain about lighting and the way
Mm-hmm.
it looks. I don't think it nails it by any means. I still think there's plenty of times you just can see way too much. Everything's lit. I swear that my complaint in modern films is you either can see everything or you can see nothing. It's never just like what the filmmaker wants you to see. I don't know why that happens. Somebody tell me why that is. Something about field of view with cameras. I'm not sure. But
I'm trying to think of like examples. Where
anytime they're in like the dark basement, you can still just see everything. It's not like there's like darkness.
I feel like it was dark.
In comparison, in comparison to contemporary movies, you're used to that. That is what they do. But again, it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. I'm saying it still was better in this aspect than other movies, but it's still like a complaint I have about contemporary movies, which I have said before. So,
Yeah. Yes, you have.
yeah, I think Hugh Grant's performance is pretty damn good. I think it was fun to see him this way. But things I didn't like was
We stick with
just
things we
liked,
like that
just I
are
liked.
spoiler free.
Okay.
On that subject, I do like how the camera moved and like what it focused on. I think for me that did build some tension with the way it focused in on Hugh Grant when he was talking about things that were maybe going to be contentious with talking with two women of faith, when he was kind of knocking their faith. Yeah, the way it like would like zoom in on his face and his like awkward or like uncomfortable smile. I found that really entertaining.
They did some
and
unique stuff.
Yeah, it made me uncomfy. And then there's like one point where someone turns an item around and the camera like full ass spins, which I thought looked good. Yeah, I really liked like what they chose to have in the frame or not.
I think, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think it was effective for me. I did feel like this movie, like the first half, I was uncomfortable as hell. Part of that is the dialogue, part of that is the setting and the confines that they set up with where the characters are located and, you know, if they can leave and all of that jazz. But I do think that leaves later in the movie, and I feel like the tension
I agree with you.
only holds for a certain amount of time.
Yes, there is scenes in the beginning that I think have a lot of tension, and I kind of feel like with every subsequent reveal of this movie, there's less and less tension and like almost less intrigue, to be honest.
Yeah.
And interest, sorry, from me.
I thought this movie was going to be more Saw-like, I guess. Not like that they'd be like like in traps and shit. But I saw it more as like this like evil game of trying to trick them. Like I anticipated it being like an evil game of him trying to trick them into saying fuck my faith, like it's not real.
I think I would have liked that better.
Well, that's what I thought, because in the trailer, like you can see him trying to like make them make the choice of belief or disbelief. So I thought like they would pick belief, and then it would lead into like another thing where he's trying like gives them more information and then
Like
traps them in some other way.
Fucked up escape room.
Yeah, you know? That's what I thought it would be, and I think because it took a detour from that, I didn't necessarily like how it took the detour as much as I wanted to like it.
I'm in complete agreement with you.
Like, I think it slowed down once the first choice is made.
It really felt, and I will look, I'm going to pull up a Letterboxd review later, but they basically said with every twist that happened, I think this movie had such a strong start and then just like unwound itself with every like twist and change as the movie went on, which is just kind of unfortunate because I do think it had a strong start. It had a strong start that was very, similar to Barbarian in a lot of ways. It made me feel very similar to the beginning of Barbarian.
Yeah, of like questioning, like, is this guy a threat or not?
And from a different perspective, though, where it's, you know, two missionaries talking to someone that is maybe just a weird faith questioning, wants to kind of do Reddit atheism gotchas to these girls. But even
that is like, and would be threatening, right? Like you're two women alone with this guy who's questioning your beliefs, regardless of if you're like, can leave or not, like that is an uncomfortable thing. Yeah. Even just to have your beliefs questioned, period, no matter the setting, is something that's really uncomfortable.
And I think all of the filmmaking, direction, and acting in those scenes is great. I think it's doing exactly what it wants to do. And I was very interested at that point. It had me lean forward in my seat, and my interest was piqued at that point.
Yeah.
And it was peaked and also peaked, if you know what I'm saying.
I don't.
There's two different words. Like peaked. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Vocab. Let's go. Cool.
But
let's go.
Yeah. I think it's hard to kind of talk about the things that didn't work as well without spoiling the movie, because that is when it's the writing that takes a shit. And I think it makes it hard to like interpret what you're supposed to get out of the movie. I still think like I know what I took from the movie and what I think the movie's trying to do, regardless of that, but I could see how it could make it more difficult to interpret. Yeah.
So do we want to do 15-second summaries? Go into spoiler zone? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we can do that. That's fine.
Entering spoiler zone now.
Okay, cool. Well, you should probably pull up your timer then if you want to do that.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Are you ready? You want to do 15-second summaries first?
Sure.
Okay, ready, go.
2 missionaries go to talk to Hugh Grant about religion, but Hugh Grant has a lot of sass about religion and then tries to trap them and talk to him about what he thinks true religion really is, but then it turns out that he just keeps women in his basement, ? I don't know.
True. Pretty good.
Okay, your turn.
Yeah. Filmmakers try to do a barbarian, but not exactly a full barbarian. But Hugh Grant's kind of like the character from Barbarian, but with like Reddit atheism thrown into it. And like maybe this movie's pro-religion? I'm not really sure.
See, I like disagree with what you just said. So
What about the pro-religion part?
I don't think this movie's pro-religion. I think this movie is like just trying to get you to think about what you believe or don't believe.
I think it's
why.
I think it's pro-faith. But we'll get to that. I can tell you why I think it's pro-faith later after I read the full description.
Fine. But if you're saying it's pro-faith just because Hugh Grant's the bad guy who's anti-faith, I think that's a stupid read.
That's not what I'm saying. I got more.
Okay,
I got more.
Because that's kind of what you were saying earlier.
I think it's pro-faith
and
in the same way a movie like Silence is pro-faith.
I haven't seen Silence, so
I can explain it then later.
Doesn't track.
Well, it's a good movie. Scorsese,
I like how you picked a movie that like most of our listeners probably haven't seen.
Well, they should. 2017 Scorsese.
You're like, guys, here's
my
my comparison point, a movie that like very few people know about.
How about any Scorsese movie that has to do with religion? Is always about questioning, but also in the end, he is usually like pro-faith, but like with drawbacks, kind of. Like
I think the end of this movie is pretty like faith bye-bye.
Oh, well, then we'll have a disagreement. So that's fine. Okay. We can talk when we get there. Okay, I'm going to read the plot description. So, 2 more missionaries, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, arrive at the home of a reclusive Englishman, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, get it? Mr. Reed. Oh, sorry. They enter after Reed tells them his wife is preparing a blueberry pie, and they begin to discuss religion. When Reed steps out of the room, Barnes realizes that the smell of blueberry pie is from a candle, the front door is locked, and they have no phone signal. Following Reed, they enter his study, where he proceeds to give a lecture arguing that all religions are adaptations of one another, and claims to have found the one true religion. Reed gives the girls a choice of 2 doors to go through in order to exit the house, one if they still believe in God, and one if they do not. Barnes rebels, refuting several of his claims before they both enter the belief door, only to discover both doors lead to the same dungeon. A decrepit woman appears, eats a poisoned pie, and dies, with Reed claiming that she is a prophet of God and the pair will witness her resurrection. A Mormon elder arrives looking for the girls, but leaves after discovering nothing. The girls unsuccessfully try screaming to get the elder's attention, but after returning to the dungeon, they witness the prophet rise again and describe the afterlife. Barnes rejects the prophet's description, noting its similarity to common hallucinations from near-death experiences. When Barnes gives Paxton a signal to attack Reed, Reed slashes Barnes' throat and claims that she too will resurrect. After Barnes bleeds out, Reed removes a metal object from inside her arm, claiming it is a microchip, and proves that Barnes was not real and the world is a simulation. Paxton, however, recognizes the object as a contraceptive implant and realizes that everything was carefully orchestrated by Reed, while the girls were distracted by the elder's arrival. A second woman hid the prophet's corpse before taking her place and delivering the afterlife description as scripted by Reed, adding an unplanned comment, "It's not real." Reed's killing of Barnes and attempt to convince Paxton of a simulated reality was an improvisation to cover the plan going awry. Paxton discovers an underground chute through which the prophet's corpse was hidden and climbs down with Reed, promising it'll show her the one true religion. Paxton finds a chamber full of emaciated women in cages, where she deduces Reed's conclusion that a desire to control others is the root of all religions. Paxton stabs Reed with a letter opener, but Reed stabs her as she tries to escape. As they bleed in the basement, Paxton begins to pray, claiming to a vexed Reed that it is done to show kindness to others rather than to produce material results. Reed prepares to finish her off, but a still living Barnes kills him with a plank of wood before dying. Paxton climbs out the window and sees a butterfly land in her hand. She had earlier expressed a desire to reincarnate as a butterfly that would appear on the hands of her loved ones. The butterfly suddenly vanishes, leaving an injured and confused Paxton alone in the snowy landscape. And that's it.
We at Horror Hour of the Hannahs know all about the chaos of setting the perfect holiday scene, like our last Halloween party. Hunting for decorations in clutter bins is sometimes scarier than any horror movie, so why not do your future self a favor and make organizing a breeze? You can buy Smart Labels QR code labels on Amazon and stick them on your storage bins. Download the Smart Labels app, scan the QR code, and catalog all the stuff going into the container. Then, months down the road when you're looking for that item, you can just search in the app and it'll tell you where you put it. Don't let missing decorations haunt you. Just slap a smart label on your bin, scan, and relax, knowing the next holiday will be terrifyingly easy.
Step into the shadows with Haunted Moonlight, your ultimate guide to all things spooky and supernatural. From spine-chilling horror movies and books to the world's most haunted places, cryptids, UFOs, and so much more, we explore it all. Join us each week for thrilling tales and eerie adventures. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram to stay updated on our latest episodes. Let Haunted Moonlight be your beacon in the dark, illuminating the mysteries that lurk just beyond the edge of every day.
I think talking about this movie, because there are chunks of the movie that we really like and then chunks that we don't, I think probably makes the most sense to talk kind of chronologically.
Sure.
So, like, just starting off in the beginning before they even go to the house, I think I really like the setup of just, like, how hard these two women are working and what being missionaries looks like to them and what, you know, kind of, like,
they're like bullied a little bit.
How strict their faith might be and like what they're able to talk about or what they're comfortable talking about it. Like, I think it makes it pretty clear that Sister Paxton, because of her faith and probably the way that she was raised and whatnot, is like a little sheltered. Like, she feels uncomfortable saying the word pornography. And like just the way that she talks about like sex is clearly very, again, sheltered, not to keep using the same word. So I thought that that was a good setup. From there, I also, you know, like when they show up at the house and they're talking with Mr. Reed. And the second that they're like invited inside and they're like, yeah, we can be there if your wife's there. I was like, fuck. He cannot possibly have a wife. Like, not possibly.
Well, if you've seen a trailer, you kind of already spoiled for that.
I don't think it's 100% clear, but it's pretty clear.
Got it.
Because of the candle reveal in the trailer of,
The
yeah.
blueberry pie candle. Yeah.
But, yeah, I honestly, though, like, don't go into a house with a dude. Regardless of your faith.
Well,
like, that's the one thing, like, their faith, they're so right. Don't go into just a dude's house.
So I was reading, and someone talked about this movie on one of the social media sites, and had said that there was a, like, big issue with missionaries, especially, like, Latter-day Saints and also Jehovah's Witnesses, like, getting themselves in danger by knocking on doors.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably why they have those policies to begin with, but especially...
But I don't know if that policy really protects you if someone wants to do harm, right?
Yeah, but I think it's a lot easier to harm you if you're in their house with the door closed. Like, I think you're more open to threat in that regard. I mean, that's the thing with, like, political canvassers. Like, how many have we had knock on our apartment in the last, like, month, like, before the election? Like, they shouldn't come in my house either.
Yeah.
Like, they're just as at threat as a Jehovah's Witness or whatnot. So... yeah, like immediately you're just like, nope, screw the mission. Don't do that. But yeah, I think, so when they first come in, they're having like this discussion about religion. And it starts off just like maybe mildly awkward. Like, oh, it's just this awkward dude who maybe doesn't know how to talk to young women and is like uncomfortable. But how did you feel about the conversation about religion that they are having?
I mean, I would say the reason they show up is because he put himself on a list that he was interested.
Yes.
So they're very excited and they really like want to convert him or do I think they do like an actual baptism right away because they talked about that.
Like how many baptisms they've done.
Yeah, how many baptisms they've done.
Yeah, we don't know the faith, so we don't actually know that.
I don't know that much about Latter-day Saints, Mormons, whatever you want to call them. So, sorry, now I lost my train of thought. I'm gone. Help me out.
I don't know what you were going to say either. Okay. You just were like, yeah, so they are trying to give him information. And that's like all you
you asked me a question, though. What was your question?
I asked how you felt about the conversation that they were having about
it seemed
religion.
normal. It seemed like fine. I thought all of his questions were reasonable and things I would ask, too. I find, like, what's the fancy word for religion? Like, when you study theology. Yeah. I find theology really interesting. I actually... like a lot of movies that cover theological elements or theological stories or like Bible stories. I'm not a religious person myself, but I do think the discussion is really interesting and fun. So I was all about it. I was like, yeah, Mormons are interesting. The most I know about Mormons is the Book of Mormon, which they reference in this. So I didn't think like any of his questions were like that out of the ordinary. Did you? Like, I'm talking when they're still in the room.
Like the front room.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was really funny how he led his question about polygamy. He was like, I have like an uncomfortable, like maybe inappropriate question, but like, can I ask? And they're like, well, we won't know
until you ask it.
So just ask it.
Also, to be honest, I think a very reasonable question from him. Because at the beginning...
Because I think that's kind of when he first starts to kind of
you
show that
start
he
to
has
think that
doubt
he's trying he's trying to like mess with them a little. But I mean, the answer to the question, and I do agree with him that it's like the answer was basically we needed more Mormons, so we allowed more men to like just procreate to give us more Mormons, and now we outlawed it because we don't need it. And then he was like, oh, well, Joseph Smith probably just did it because he got caught cheating on his wife and was like, well, God told me we can. And like, it is very silly, but it is interesting to see how religion can like basically cheat is what I'm saying. Like a person who is in power can say, well, the religion says we can now, and it's fucked up. But I also think it's interesting how they have like an answer to all of it. And like their answer makes enough sense.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job like dealing with his shit and his questions. Like they're clearly very knowledgeable in like the beliefs of their faith. And I think they're able to articulate it really well when he is being like sassy or flat out rude. Obviously the discussion takes a sharper turn once they realize they're not getting out of the house.
Yeah, the door is locked.
And the door is locked. And he basically brings them into what is a makeshift church.
It's like a little,
temple.
his like pews. It's everything, right? Because
Yeah.
we do find out later that he basically is a huge theology studier and just like has done years and years of research into this. Mm-hmm. Can I also say in that whole scene, I thought Sophie Thatcher was phenomenal. I've never really seen her in everything. Throughout this whole movie, I loved her. So I was very sad when she died. I was like pretty pissed, honestly. I was hoping she was going to go the distance.
Kind of the vibe that I got from like the intro scene with the characters is that Sophie Thatcher, who plays Sister Barnes, I think has more lived experience, it seems.
She's a convert.
Yes, so she has more lived experience outside of the church. So I think she is, so she knows, like that's what she's like more comfortable talking about sex and pornography in the beginning. And I think, like we said, Sister Paxton is a lot more sheltered.
She's awkward.
And awkward with certain subjects. And I do think that is why, like, throughout the movie, he obviously sees her as the weaker link. Not because she's dumb, but because she is more sheltered.
His goal almost seems to, like, corrupt almost, or, like, get them to denounce their
That's
faith.
100%.
But, like, it's more than that, too, because he kind of wants to kill them also.
Yeah, I think that is part of why it gets a little messy, is because it's like, is his goal just to teach them that they're wrong, period? And let them go. But then if that were just the goal, he wouldn't have let her see all the naked ladies in the cages.
And I think that, and we'll get to that, but I do think that's where some of the thematic elements fall apart for me. But let's keep going.
Yeah, so then they have the actual conversation where he's like basically giving like a college course, like lecture.
He uses
on religion.
Monopoly to teach how basically the three monolithic, is that the word?
Yes.
Monolithic religions. I'm not sure if that's the right word. We'll go with it. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the order in which they came out and how they're basically all just the same with different interpretations.
Yeah, they're basically like just adaptations of each other.
Like Judaism's just Old Testament, Christianity's New Testament, and then Islam is both. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say Christianity's both. And then Islam basically sees Jesus as not the Son of God, but as just a prophet.
Did he actually go into all of that? Because
he did.
Okay.
And then he goes, Mormonism is the cheap knockoff of Christianity.
It was Bob Ross Monopoly.
Yeah, Bob Ross Monopoly. And it's basically just how all religion, at least the monolithic ones, I still feel like that word's wrong, but we're going with it, are knockoffs of each other and just build upon each other.
And I was like,
I've completely I agree with him
You
completely
right,
in that
home
situation.
dog.
That doesn't mean they all have their own merits for people.
And I think that's kind of where I think he makes like a lot of points that I do agree with, but he's only capturing like a part of it. You know, like he says religion is just to explain death. And I've said that on this podcast like a ton of times. I think that there are obviously different purposes in having, or maybe I haven't, but I've had this conversation with my mom. Like there are different purposes to having religion, right? Like community, explaining death, giving you a moral compass. It could be a coping skill. You know, obviously evolutionarily, like it serves a ton of different roles, but one of them very much is to explain what happens when we die. But obviously that's not the whole thing. And so I think he kind of like has this one stance of it, but he's lacking kind of the nuance. And that is where his argument kind of falls down the drain, is that he's unwilling to accept that like there is more nuance than he's giving religion as a whole.
He's also, I mean, just not a good person.
Like, yeah, he's the bad guy.
The route I would have gone down is like, yeah, they're all iterative. Like the real complaint is, why does this religion think that this religion's going to hell because they don't believe in it, when it's like you guys literally almost all believe the same thing. Not fully, but like almost complete overlap. Why have we fought wars over land between like two or three? All three of them have fought wars over the Holy Land, when it's like, you all believe the same thing. I just watched Kingdom of Heaven, which had a lot of stuff about this, so I've been thinking about it a lot. Good movie.
I do think that that is like a major point that he
Why
left
do you hate
out.
each other? You know,
Like, if you're going to be critical of religious institutions, then leaving that out, or like leaving out how people. Never mind. I was going to say something that I think isn't explicitly said, but like is heavily implied with the overall theming. So, oops.
Okay. Well,
But yeah,
continue.
So that is then, like we said, where he
I
makes
do
them
like
choose.
that discussion, though.
I
Sorry,
really
should
liked
say.
those scenes. Well, so the reason that I kind of wanted to break it down chronologically is because earlier you were saying that he basically says all of the movie's themes like verbally, and that you had a problem with that. So I thought you had a problem with those two scenes.
Oh, I do have a problem with these scenes, but I didn't think we were on that. Oh, it's not a movie. It's a video essay. Like, it's... these are all things I'm interested in, and like it is not exactly informative because it is like clouded by his own opinion. But I feel like I'm getting a lecture that I could have just like read online and have read online or watched a video essay on. And instead I get a 15-minute or what feels like a 15-minute scene out of this movie to just straight up like say these things. And it just feels a little unnuanced and it's just odd.
Well,
It's a weird structure.
I don't know. I saw it as more than that because obviously they're reacting to it, like Barnes especially is like, no, here is why you're wrong, or here is why there's nuance to what you are saying.
Yeah.
Which...
It felt like a forum discussion, you know?
Yeah, but that's fine. That's not a video essay, though. Like, I think that they were using this movie to have a discussion, to show those kinds of discussions that I think, like, people are very sensitive to religion. These aren't discussions that, like, a lot of people can comfortably have, because people can be very defensive of their beliefs, whether they're religious or not religious. Like, you're not allowed to talk about religion in a lot of settings. Like, that is an uncomfortable thing. So I think they were using this movie very much as a means to have those conversations and put that out there on the big screen and make those conversations accessible. So like, while I can understand why you're like, yeah, he's just lecturing, I think because there's more like nuance and discussion to it, I see it a little different.
That's fine. I just think as a movie, it's a very weird structure. And that's like,
And that's fine. I think,
feel.
yeah, I think when he's like legit giving a presentation, I agree with that. But
I was entertained by it.
But
It's
I was
just
so
like,
entertained that like I didn't really care.
It's hard to explain. Like I said, I did feel entertained. It's just like, I feel like a lot of the thematic elements we talk about are subtext. And in this movie, it's just like straight up text, and it feels weird. If that makes sense.
I don't know. I feel like it ends up being.
Well, let's get to that.
nuanced
We can keep moving.
Yeah.
And
So
we'll get to that.
then is when he has them pick the doors, which I thought was really interesting because Sister Paxton is like, obviously he wants us to pick the other door that's not disbelief. Like, obviously he wants us to go disbelief because he doesn't have belief.
I knew that whole time. I was like, they go to the same place because his whole point is that he literally said beforehand, you're fucked either way. He goes, the it's a fallacy. Not a fallacy. There's a word I'm looking for. I can't remember. I'm sorry. My brain is not working today. But basically, if you believe in religion and and basically you believe in religion, you believe in Christianity, you're now accepting that your all-powerful God also allows horrible tragedies to happen. He allows children to get cancer.
Yeah,
he kills off your parents.
He
does all this
explicitly
stuff.
says that, yes.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. And that's horrifying. So that means
Yes.
your all-powerful God sucks. You've heard me have this
we've had that
conversation before.
discussion.
Jesus pretty cool. God kind of a dick, in my experience. But so it's an inside joke between him
No,
and
I think we have to have story time.
No, it's fine.
Finish
I was
your
really
point.
drunk and was saying that one night. But
Yeah, he was really drunk and telling our friend's new girlfriend, who was very, very Christian, repeatedly, Jesus was pretty cool. God was kind of a dick.
Well-
and we were like,
yeah,
Cut it out, cut it out.
I still stand by it.
She did
Especially,
not appreciate
you got to remember, I said I like theology in movies. I like the stories a lot, and all the stories have led me to that conclusion. Let's be real. Dude got angry and flooded the earth. Other ones like, let me heal your blindness.
yeah,
All
but
right,
I
come
think
on.
that's, you kind of pulled like a Hugh Grant in that moment.
I
Where you're
might
basically
be.
just like telling her what is true or not about her religion or like what she should or
No,
shouldn't
I
believe.
wasn't telling her anything. I was telling her my opinion.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I think you were Hugh Granting.
Okay, other point. So that is one. So we can accept that basically, if there is an all-powerful God, he seems kind of evil based on those things. Or we can say there's no God, and when we die, nothing happens, which is also scary. You're fucked either way, is his point. So that's obviously, he said that, and I was like, okay, well, the belief or disbelief lead to fucked either way. So I know they're going into the same.
Well, and also
Same
when they
room.
open the door, like we can see that they both kind of lead down a similar sort of tunnel. So then I was like, oh, there's no better option when just looking at them.
And that's his point, though, is that believing or not. I thought his point was believing or not believing doesn't matter. You're fucked. Like I said, it's bad either way. And I was like, yeah, I do feel that. So I at this point, I do agree with him still. Like, but continue. Sorry. Let's get
I
into
don't
the
know.
whole-
And I think I struggle with like what the two different doors are actually trying to say beyond what you explicitly just said.
I will say
because-
Paxton says something later that I also agree with that counters to him. So we'll get there. Not to just straight up say I agree with the bad guy.
Lost what I was going to say.
My bad.
Onward, I guess.
Cool.
That's gone.
We're going into the hole now.
Well, so this is where I think it starts to lose me, because when he was having them pick the doors, I was like, oh, fuck, yeah, he's giving them challenges. Like, he's really like, because at first it's just a fucking lecture, and then he's like, okay, you're gonna learn something from this, and I'm gonna, like, I really thought he was gonna then, like, keep fucking with them, I guess, and be like, okay.
It should have gone the Sal route.
Here are your, Sal.
Saw. Sorry.
So, yeah, he was like, yeah, I really thought, like, the next thing would be like, okay, well, now you have to choose between these things. And I thought, like, the end goal was obviously to get them to be like, okay, I don't have faith anymore. But, like, I do think that's partially, like, where it leads to, like, questioning faith, but I don't like how it got there necessarily.
No, it
'cause I thought
goes
stupid.
insane, because then he's like, okay,
Now I have this weird prophet in my
I have
basement.
this prophet that we're going to kill and bring back to life, and we're going to prove religion's real. You're going to see a miracle here.
Which
Did I say that
doesn't
word
make
right?
sense with everything else.
Well,
that
he
had
is
been
still
set
trying
up.
to prove them a point, but it does feel off.
Yeah, it
So this whole
feels
thing
like
happens.
a direct contradiction from everything he's been saying. For him to be like, oh, there is a religion or a faith or something, whatever.
The whole thing happens. Topher Grace shows up, which was a really funny casting, because we're like, is that Topher Grace as the elder?
It was extremely funny. He
and
brought nothing to the movie. It could have been any dude.
Yeah.
Except it was
I was
Topher
happy
Grace.
to see him. I like his voice.
It was so funny. I leaned over and I was like, wow, it's Topher Grace.
So then what happens? She eats the poison pie and dies. That was kind of scary. Topher Grace shows up. And at this point in the movie, I'm like, not that stressed. And I was like, I know they're in this basement, but in my head, I was like, I don't think he wants to kill them. It's clear to me he's like trying to convert them to atheism. I don't really know. So like for me, the tension was gone once they were in the basement.
I'm scared of basement, so it was not totally gone, but I would say it was significantly less stressful than him lecturing. Like, him just
Yeah.
giving a lecture was actually very stressful.
At that point, I also thought I was like, okay, what's going to happen once they go through here? Like, you're right. What's the next thing? And now they're down there. I was like, well, in my head, and maybe this was silly. I was like, it doesn't seem like he has any reason to actually want to kill them based on his motivations. So like when they're trying to escape, I was like, well, you guys aren't getting out of here, but like whatever, like just play his game.
Let you out
just play his game, like figure it out.
Then he kills
and then I was wrong. And so like any of the tension that was there when they were upstairs, I thought was just gone for me. You said you still had basement tension.
Yeah.
But I think I'm not crazy to say that.
Well, also the lady was scary looking, and then like she dies, so I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And then I do think they played with like the whole like escape tension like of any movie of like, are they gonna get out or are they not? But then I feel like it was pretty obvious that there was enough runtime left that they weren't gonna get out.
And
so
it wasn't interesting. They were just like trying to get matches to light something on fire, and it was like, well, that's not gonna work. But
I wish it was something else that had been dropped that they were trying to get to use as like a weapon or something. I would have found that maybe more interesting, but whatever. I mean, it's fine. It's just not. Yeah. But this is where I think the movie like super lost me, is when then like the lady comes back and tells them what she saw. And I feel like maybe I missed her whole narrative.
I couldn't hear her at all.
Because then later when they're like, when Sister Paxton is like, well, she messed up your speech. I was like, did she? Because I didn't really hear the speech.
I couldn't understand it.
Like, I didn't retain the speech enough to to follow then the plot, which could be an us problem. But if it's both of us, then that's weird.
But after that, is that when he kills Barnes?
So yeah, he kills Barnes, and the contraceptive in her arm, I also thought was gonna be like, he was gonna be like, see, she didn't fully have faith anyway, because her faith wouldn't have said that that was okay.
That she wasn't a real person; she was a NPC,
which was fucking off the wall crazy.
I didn't.
And then Paxton is like, well, you don't even believe that. You just said that because your girl messed up her speech and you're covering. But because I didn't hear the speech, I was like, I'm confused.
They hit us with like an Ocean's 11 explanation for it, except it wasn't entertaining.
That didn't need to be there. I thought that was weird. And I think, honestly, it would have been a much more effective route if she did have the contraception and he's like, look, I did this to show you your friend wasn't fooling her faith either.
And that's just not
like
what it was,
I thought that was where it was going to be.
No, he's just a bullshitter. He's a used car salesman. Like,
well, I think that's probably who Hugh Grant is.
Yeah, maybe
he's extremely charismatic. He could like sell you,
but that's
a moldy loaf of bread, and you'd be happy. Like,
I want to say though, like it's clear he's a bullshitter. So now let's think back to all of the things he said that we agreed with. The movie's going, well, he's actually just a bullshitter. So like. Well, and that's where I'm like, well, so he's a charlatan. And so does that mean that his, I think, valid critiques of religion are you telling me that, yeah, he's a charlatan, I shouldn't actually think those things and I'm bad for thinking that? It's like a very weird.
I understand why you would see that, because a lot of times like we don't agree with the villain. Like the villain is supposed to be an opposite viewpoint from what we're supposed to agree with generally. So I can understand why you felt that way, but for me, I was like, yeah, weird choice, but I was more like, clearly it's more like they want us to think of something more nuanced. Like, yeah, we're like, well, part of what he is saying is factually correct, but it doesn't mean his means of teaching that or like his means of living his life without religion are right either. So I think it kind of just like contributes to the nuance of like, yeah, for some people religion is good and so for some people it's not, and like that's okay kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, let's keep moving because I think there's more themes to discuss in the next couple scenes.
Well, then what happens then? She goes into the basement,
finds a body. He's got a bunch of Satan stuff up. So
that was weird as fuck.
He's a Satanist. Okay, that's not even the case. He wasn't a Satanist.
I don't know why they had that. I think they were just trying to be like, ooh, scary for either
he studied all theology.
Us.
He studied paganism too. Like,
but I thought that was dumb. I think it would have been scarier if she was just like walking down a tunnel like a barbarian. Like,
she gets to, speaking of barbarian, she gets to the end of the tunnel, and then there's a bunch of women in cages, just like Barbarian. Well, sort of. It feels very similar to Barbarian. He's got a bunch of women in tunnels that he's just been holding there.
I like that it was her own bike lock that locked off the door, though. I thought that was a good touch, and I think it actually did make it really scary because it was like their
creepy.
Own belongings were used to lock up these women.
Clear that he had been controlling everything the whole time.
Yes.
Somehow. Kind of felt like a little convoluted, but
I felt like it was pretty obvious that he was a puppet master the whole time. Like, he had set up the whole thing. He kept going into the kitchen to make the pie. Like, he clearly just went out and moved some bikes.
I
or
also was
said,
saying,
hey, girl, you go out and
some
move
of his
bike.
ability to do things I thought was a little far-fetched, similar to like the Ocean's movies, which I love. So
I didn't feel that way. I
You
feel
didn't
like
think
the
the part-
timing made sense of all of it.
I thought the changing the body, he got lucky because they were going there for their elder that randomly showed up. So did he plan on Topher Grace showing up so they could change the body out?
I need to think about that.
Yeah, it's fine. So they get there.
Well, I think either way, he was going to get them to like move
At some
somewhere.
point, I'm
like,
sure.
I think that's
Fine. So
we
they
can
get into the
suspend
basement
disbelief.
and they're all there. They're probably all other former missionaries. Did you
I think
about
that's
that?
implied.
Yeah.
that he's done this,
he goes,
and then he just keeps them.
this is the real religion. It's control, because all religions are trying to control people. And that's the whole point of them, is for societal control, monetary control, honestly, social control, sexual control, like a body autonomy control. And also, I kind of agree with him in some ways on that.
That's what I think, again, becomes hard, because you're like, a point was made. I think a lot of people might feel that way about religion, and I do think there are ways in which religion is used to control people. I think like a pretty prime example in this country is like using religion to control people's bodies or tell people who they can and cannot marry. That's not like, that's people using their religion to control people.
Yep.
In a way that's clearly not right, not moral, not okay. And obviously religion is supposed to be moral and good and right. And so, yeah, like those things do contradict. And so I think that that is a very fair point. But again, he's still lacking.
He's got women in his basement to prove the point.
He's got women in his basement. But two, again, it's kind of lacking the nuance of like religion does do good things for people.
He's just a psycho. Like I said, he's a charlatan and also a fucking psychopath. But he's got some decent points about religion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but like, I think you can agree with him while also acknowledging that he doesn't have the full picture.
Yeah. Well, I would say this part's kind of silly though. The bodies are interesting, or the women, they're interesting in the basement, but it's like
We
barbarian.
kind of skipped through that really fast.
Oh, so what else is there to say?
No, I mean, they skipped through it really fast.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like there's even like that crazy
It's not even that creepy.
reveal.
Considerable, but because of
bodies in the
Barbarian.
basement.
Barbarian coming out before this really, I think, makes it like and maybe it's because we've been around him a little longer, so he doesn't seem as like skeevy, where compared to that other guy in Barbarian that had been keeping women in his basement for 50 years, there's like a little bit of a difference.
I think they set up that guy right as a threat, right? Like his first scene is him spying on a woman and then implying that he's going to kidnap, and then him going to his home and hearing screaming in the basement. Like, I think it's very well set up that he's a threat.
Feeling.
This doesn't have the set up that he is that kind of a threat. So maybe we should have been like more shocked even, but like for some reason I feel like we were just like,
it just didn't hit. I was just like, okay,
this is happening now.
I'm gonna breeze through it. So basically then she stabs him, right? She runs upstairs, he catches up, she can't get outside.
Also, him laying on her while he was dying, like, why do you think he did that?
Laying on her,
like, he goes and he's like, basically,
well, we didn't get to that
laying
part.
on her
I didn't get to the
chest.
part where she stabbed her yet.
Like, do you think he was only doing that because he was trying to like make sure that she died? That he was laying on her?
I don't know.
But like, he was gonna die anyway, so what's the point?
But they're
I thought that scene was like kind of uncomfortable. I don't know. I didn't get it.
But they're both bleeding, and she begins to pray, which pisses him off. And she makes, I think, a very very good thematic point, which we're going to bring silence back in because I think it's a very similar point of silence.
Just explain what she was saying.
She says we don't pray to make change. Like, we pray just to like show kindness, because like just like by knowing we can pray and by knowing we can send kindness to someone else, like that's enough. And that's like what faith is, right? And she's like, it's not really to make change. It's just to care about people. And like, that's what religion is caring about people. And I was like, yeah, great point, girl. Like, I agree. If that's how you're using your religion to help people, show empathy and care, great. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't do that.
Well,
I know a lot of people that don't do that.
That's what I always like. I mentioned early in the episode, like my mom always gets like pissy at me for not being as
going to church,
religious as I used to be when I was younger, and she doesn't like that I don't go to church. And I always tell her, like, I don't need that personally to make the right decisions and be kind to people. I don't, like I mentioned earlier, I don't need that to explain what happens when I die. I don't need that to do X, Y, and Z.
I ain't worried.
I don't need that for community. Like, I don't need it. It doesn't bring me anything. But I think in her case, like with Sister Paxton, if that brings you that, then that's great. Then, like, use that. Don't use it as a crutch to harm people. Like he says religion is for, but like it doesn't have to be that. Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, I think they're both right. The thing is, I think from my experience, I think it's a little naive to not acknowledge that religion has caused a lot of death, a lot of suffering, and that missionaries in particular throughout history have caused enormous amounts of suffering. And you, by being a missionary, are kind of like a product of that. And I'm sorry, Paxton, but that aligns me with the dude that's keeping women in the basement. So I feel weird about the themes of this movie. And I do agree with what she's saying. Right? But like, I think it's naive is kind of the takeaway I come with it. And I think that he's a nuanced little bitch. Unnuanced little bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fuck them both. Just kidding. She's good. I'm glad she gets out. But I do think missionaries are bad. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, I think it's bad. Honestly, who gives a shit in America? Like,
for sure.
I really don't care here. I don't really care in like a quote first world country. I care when you're going into an area that already has like turmoil and you're using your religion to like cause strife and danger for the people there.
Hey, that's what silence is all about.
I know.
So
that is the issue with missionaries that obviously we're referring to. And I think that's what Book of Mormon is like.
Yes,
talking
100%.
About quite a bit.
And so I think why I feel very conflicted thematically though is it does just come down to the fact that what is this movie telling me? Does it want me to just like question and think? It's hard to say when they're presenting two sides that I think make sense, but one of them is murdering people and keeping people in their basement. And so like that, it just doesn't work in my opinion. Like, and the director can feel however they want. I think they feel conflicted and that's all right. I would imagine. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they're saying if you're a Reddit atheist, you're as bad as a killer. I don't know. But that's my feeling. Sorry, but go ahead. I'm rambling.
Well, so let's talk about the very end. So, Barnes comes
back to life. She resurrects.
Like she's either resurrecting like a miracle, or she was just like on the brink of death.
It's both.
Used her last adrenaline to be like whack. But it's open to interpretation. It's
100% open to interpretation.
It's either like we could see it as an example of their faith or not. And then she gets out of the house, but then she's outside. The phone still doesn't have signal. And then, even though it's supposed to, outside. And then she sees a butterfly land on her hand, looks away, or the camera pans away or whatever. And then she looks back and the butterfly's not there. So for me, like at first, I was like,
oh, I have a thought. Go ahead.
So I think there's like a bunch of different ways, again, we could read this. Like we could read this as she died.
I did not even think about that until you just described it now. And I was going to go, oh, she's dead. I did not think about it once.
Well, because she says throughout the movie, like when I die, I want to be a butterfly and land on my loved one's hand. So we could see it as she's dead. She's not the butterfly yet, but that's why she's seeing a butterfly because that's something to do with her dying wish. And that is why she's seeing, like, it's like a hallucination of her dying that she's seeing her friend kill him because she is stabbed and she's just dying in the basement. So that is one reading of it. But I think another reading of it could be that she does get out.
And it's Barnes.
And either I think she wants to see it as Barnes. She wants to see her friend Barnes, the butterfly, landing on her. But it's not real.
It's just
because she's losing faith.
Oh, okay.
I think
she's losing faith.
Being gone is maybe, it could be seen as a loss of faith.
I'm making a face because I think thematically that really doesn't work.
Well, and then the phone not being connected to signal when it should be, and that phone was used throughout the movie. They're trying to get in contact with their religious community. The phone then not having signal could be her like kind of disconnected from her religious community because she's realizing there are things about what he said that may be correct or may not be correct for her.
But that doesn't make sense to me because the way the movie ends, all of the things she believes are proved true. He gets justice. She gets out because of a miracle happening. I have to strain to say that word because I'm bad at speaking. And Like, it just doesn't really work.
Well,
like, why? If anything, she should be more religious than ever after what she went through.
I think you could see that either way, then that part either way, right? Like, that's either her losing her faith as the butterfly's gone, or she saw the butterfly period to begin with because of her continued and maintained faith. I think that you can kind of picture that in either way, and I think that's why it's open to interpretation, because there really is no one answer. Is religion good or bad?
Okay, that's fine.
I think that's kind of the total point of the movie, is to have this conversation and get to the point of like, is it good, is it bad? Question mark. It depends on the person and the community and the, like, country and whatever.
Yeah. Personally, I don't think the movie did the legwork to have that ambiguous ending really work for me. But if it worked for you, I'm happy for you.
It worked for me, and I feel like when I was looking up, it worked for a lot of people. But
yeah, people love this. I just didn't really like it.
Just some background from the writers. Woods said, where we grew up in Middle America, you're not even allowed to talk about religion at the dinner table. It's an uncomfortable conversation to have. End of quote. They lived in a small town that didn't really have a lot of religious diversity, so they weren't really exposed to other religions or faith. And so, quote, as we got older and moved outside of the state, our eyes opened to the spectrum of religion, marrying into families that had different religious beliefs, and all of a sudden having friends that were of different belief systems, atheists, Scientology, Islam, etc. And so they basically said that their ultimate goal is to conquer human psychology. They said his ultimate goal is to conquer human psychology through planning. He's basically saying, like, he's comparing Hugh Grant to, like, how cult leaders operate, like thinking 10 steps ahead of, like, how they can exert control and change.
And Hugh Grant's character would say that he feels that way too.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he's going for.
Yes.
He wants to show that it's all just control, but.
And so basically they're seeing as, like, retesting his hypothesis of if religion is an ultimate form of control. And it kind of leaves that
ambiguous.
Ambiguous. And they said that ultimately they were thankful for A24 because they are an entire studio built around taking big swings and investing in original ideas and filmmakers, and we've never felt more protected in making a movie that we wanted to make. I know that other studios wanted to make this movie, but they wanted to make a movie that had less philosophy and less religion and less dialogue, and that is the opposite of the film that they were trying to make.
I think that's all cool. That's neat that they were able to make this the way they wanted. I think it's a weird movie structurally still, but it probably makes sense why it is. Because I think it is hard to get away with something like this.
I think it is brave.
I still don't think it's all that successful, but if you liked it, you liked it. So, but that's just me. You know how I feel.
Yeah.
I'll tell you straight up. Sorry. That's what we come here for. Horror Out with the Hannahs. We tell you how it is.
So I guess in essence, if you put it all together, like, what is your end takeaway from this movie? Like, thematically. Because I think I've said mine.
My end takeaway is that you can have a bad guy that makes points that the audience agrees with, and I think a lot of times you will because the audience is sometimes silly. But if you do, you need that bad guy to not keep women in basements. That's my main thing, or not try to slaughter half of humanity like Thanos. And who's also just a fascist anyway. And everyone was like, oh, he's got a point. And I was like, you're siding with the fascists, you idiot. He literally is promoting fascist ideology. But there are definitely plenty of bad guys that I think make good points. And I can go to Marvel again. I think Killmonger was a great example of that. But guess what? Like, that dude wasn't keeping women in basements and wasn't trying to slaughter half of humanity. So, writers, take notes. That's my main takeaway. Do I make a good point?
No, and I understand what you're saying, and I kind of felt that way too. I was like, what am I supposed to get? Like, what does that say about me? That there are things that the bad guy said that I'm like, yeah, historically you are correct. But I think kind of the point is that there is a lot of nuance that is okay to have. Religion, there isn't one end all be all. We're all allowed to have our different opinions about, like, if it works for us or it doesn't. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's just so much nuance when it comes to religion and different belief systems and how people use that religion for themselves or other people. Like, obviously, it's bad to keep women in your basements. It's bad to use religion as a form of control. That doesn't mean religious systems don't do that, but that's not what it's supposed to be for, which I think is kind of like Barnes and Paxton's point, too.
I'm going to say one more thing, and then I think I'm good. I think structurally, I said this movie is interesting. However, I think a lot of movies have done this exact same thing in a much more nuanced and better way. Examples being Silence. I think even Barbarian kind of like touches on some of this.
No,
and like
I don't agree.
Faith in people. Well, I've seen other people talk about it on Twitter.
I've never seen a movie that touched on religion like this.
Spotlight, I think, is an example that really kind of does this and is a little more talky. And I just think I think there are just better movies. There's multiple Scorsese movies that I think also do, and I'm pretty sure Last Temptation of Christ.
Okay, that's fine.
But no, that was my only point.
Just because movies do it better doesn't mean this movie didn't do something worth watching or discussing.
Sure.
So.
That's fine. I don't ever want to watch it again, but that's fine.
I would watch it again, I think.
Okay. Well, do we have anything else we want to say?
I still really want the A24 Blueberry Candle. I really want it, actually. I think it's hilarious. I want it so bad.
Okay. Well,
side note, that's why I'm wearing blue to record the episode on theme.
You're funny. Is there anything else we need to say, or do we want to rate it?
I think we can rate it.
Okay. You want me to go first?
Yep.
I am giving this movie a 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I saw that coming.
Yep. It's very, very average, in my opinion. But, yeah, one?
6.5, 7.
Damn, that's high, in my opinion. But if you liked it, you liked it.
There were things about it, like I love the
first half.
With a house
divided.
I loved the first half. So even though I think it like loses steam and gets kind of weird, I think it's offering something that I really appreciate. So, and I think the performances were all good. And like, I like stories that are contained to only a few characters in one point in time. I think that all works really well for me. So.
Fine by me. We have a house divided.
It's not like those scores are that.
I'm also completely divided from the rest of the community. Everyone seems to love this, and I am not. I just don't get it. But whatever.
You're a lone wolf.
Maybe it is the first like horror movie to tackle this topic.
Exactly.
But I think in my head, because I as I said before, I kind of like this in movies. I have gone on my way to watch other movies that have tackled this. So when I see this, it's like a little frustrating, but that's fine. That could be it.
Yeah.
I understand. I'll have nuance, unlike our bad guy in this movie. Or at least I'll try. All right, we good here? We done?
Yep.
All right, I'm Matt Hanna.
I'm Hannah.
Maybe don't knock on strangers' doors all the time.
Don't keep people in your basement.
Yeah, definitely don't keep women in your basement. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to Horror Hour with the Hannas. Make sure to listen to future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you can find podcasts. You can follow us at Horror Hour with the Hannas on TikTok and Instagram for more content. If you like the podcast, please follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. Happy hauntings!